Super. Well, it's nice to see some familiar faces. Welcome. Hi and hello. Yeah, so let's see. I actually already gave a little walkthrough of Peerdom yesterday, so I'm curious to see how my improvisation will differ from 24 hours ago. But I'm also happy to kind of, cut my monologue a bit short and talk maybe more about specific problems as well. I think that could make this slightly different from just me clicking around and showing features. But I'm happy to give a quick overview about what Peerdom is and how it might help you. A little bit about our philosophy, and then showcase a couple things in the software. I think it's useful to see rather than me to just wave my hands around a lot. But I think as a starting point, just the backstory about why we're here and what we're doing, it really has to do with visualization of organizations and collaboration. We're heavily inspired by this idea of cartography and maps and orientation around objects. Inside of Peerdom, we draw this map analogy a bit farther by really talking about, okay, who's responsible for what work is currently going on, how is our work organized and structured. And then we try to add meaning to the maps as much as possible. So through coloring and texture and depth and additional layers. And this perspective game ideally, brings insights to people about how this, this kind of fuzzy notion of an organization and of collaboration can become slightly more tangible. So this is a little bit of our aspiration behind building the software. We're also aware that there are other organizational tools out there and collaboration tools, and I think one of the things that really that we really focus on is a kind of agnosticism to a particular organizational dogma. So that being said, we're incredibly aware of very particular ones. Here we're in a Sociocracy conference, so we're not allergic to ideas coming from these different organizational designs, but rather inspired by them and trying to build a tool which doesn't force you to operate in a particular way. So if you like Sociocracy and love its process rules, but you determine for your organization that one doesn't make sense, then the software is not going to force you to use all of the process rules. So we build in this kind of frictionless experience in order that the software doesn't have to be too opinionated to force you to operate in a particular way, but as flexible as possible to represent the different organizational models that we found out there. So this is a little bit of the design philosophy behind it. And I'll go ahead and jump into something slightly more visual. Let's see here. There we go, our screen. Okay, here we go. Perfect. And here we are. So I'll start kind of at an overview level. One thing that I think is worth looking at to begin with is the so-called this Discover page, which is a library of organizations who are already on Peerdom and who have shared their map for transparent reasons about how they're organizing. And I think this is instructive as just like from a bird's eye view to see that every organization uses different colors and different visual forms or map layouts in order to see their organization. And this is a wealth of knowledge about how to structure roles and to define them and how you might, put together an organization. You can go and seek inspiration, but it also shows you how people are using Peerdom differently in order to display their organization. And so I think this is a good place to go if you want to just poke around and learn a little bit more how people are actually using it in the wild. And we'll come straight to the building blocks. So this is a map that we have for our team at Peerdom, which makes it slightly meta, I guess, because we're talking about how we organize ourselves. The main feature in some sense is that you build this map of roles, and the roles are structured or grouped together. The roles are these little circles. And if you were to click on a role, then you can set, accountabilities or an aim or add additional fields here. This is also possible, things like domains or, I don't know if you want to put competencies there or required prerequisites. However you want to structure the definition of a role is possible. But you define a role, and roles are assigned to people. It's as simple as that. So it's who is working on what and what are your responsibilities. But of course, being familiar with sociocracy, you get the idea of one person holding multiple roles, and it's not just necessarily a one-to-one relationship. This is visually shown very easily by just clicking on different peers and seeing what roles light up. So this is just kind of clicking around. Obviously, some people can be more focused and just hold one role. Others can be very spread out like myself and hold too many roles. And this is a kind of visual way of saying, okay, one person, multiple roles, multiple teams, multiple initiatives. And again, it's a role map effectively. So if I'm jumping over to another map just really quickly to show you this idea that when you start Peerdom, the very first thing you'll do is build this role map. So you'll list out the people who are in the organization. You kind of add them to the list. You can also synchronize that list through integrations to other Active Directories. So if you have, like, I don't know, the Microsoft or Google systems, and you already have emails and things like this, this can be integrated directly so that the list is parallelized. And you start by putting people in and building roles and grouping them together. That's like the starting point. And what you'll see is that we've designed it to be quite simple from that perspective. It's you start and you have three options. You can add these roles, you can group them together, and you can add colleagues. And these are the only options at your disposal with the map. And on top of that, you can also view the map through different lenses. And this is something that we like to play around with a lot, which is how does a different perspective maybe show you some insight about your organization? And different people in the organization might even want to view the organization differently. So we offer the option of this kind of classical nested role view, which you see here, but also the ability to not nest it or to kind of spread it out a bit. And I'll show you a bit how this might look different, but it's the same role map, but with just a different visual form. So in this case, this is a visual form that shows what it's like to spread it out and not nest the roles. So each of the roles are kind of going around the circumference of the circle. You also have things like a list view, which is just a table, and that can be expanded again with an alternate way of looking at it, and this 3D view, which is slightly more experimental right now, but we're playing around with also being able to circumnavigate the organization in like a constellation, let's say. So yeah, this visual part is something that's important in our design and the way that we're thinking about looking at organizations, so multiple perspectives. But this is all based on just the map. So this is a role map, looking at it in different ways, who's responsible for what. There's also a kind of secondary lens of looking at the organization, which isn't on the collective level, but at the individual level. So every person has a role profile, and that is actually, we'll stay on this map for a second, just because I'll show you that only that map is installed and only those options exist, like we talked about. And only on the profile, all you see is this collection of roles that the person has. This is in Swedish, so I realize that it might be slightly confusing for the moment, but I'll hop over to another map. And the reason I started here was just because, well, they only have the map installed. And I think that's a starting point for understanding the simplicity of the software to begin with. But you, of course, can add a lot of more functionality and buttons and options. And what you see here along this side are a bunch of apps which have been installed on our instance. And also, if I drop down that same menu, you see that there are a ton more options. So there are other things that can be created, but none of that was available for that other map because they haven't installed additional apps. So you start with a map, a role map, you can visualize it how you want, and you have a role profile, and that's the kernel of the software. And then you add additional modules as you wish, and each of them can do different things. That's fairly generic for the moment, but we'll get into what they can do a little bit, and that will be defined over time. But also what that means is that that profile, which we looked at before, which only contained a set of roles, is also enhanced by the different applications that you have. So instead of just seeing the collection of roles that one has, you can also see which projects one is involved in, or which goals one is involved in, what the progress is toward those goals, etc. And that can be done, again, on the individual perspective lens or on the collective lens. And the collective lens is on top of the map. So, for instance, if we had installed the goals app and created some goals and attached those goals to a role or to a circle, then you can see those goals being updated in multiple places. So let's say we had a goal attached to a role, this networker role. All of a sudden, its role description is given a new section with the goal progress, and you can kind of update it and whatever. Then you also, when I was in my, because these two people are associated with that goal, if you went to their profile, you would see that the goal is in their profile as well, because they're involved in that goal. But also on the collective level, you can add the goals as a layer. So turning on this layer then displays what the progress is toward the goal at a bird's eye view. So here you can see that there's a goal attached there, here, here, This one's about 10% the way, and maybe 55% here. And this gives you a kind of visual overview about progress on goals wherever they are attached in your organization. So this other concept of adding an app, putting information in, attaching it to a geographic place, and then adding it as a map layer is another notion that we play around with a lot. So recently we also we have a network app where you can tie your organization to partner organizations or to suppliers or to clients or whatever. And this, for instance, is another layer. So if I turn it on, you can see who are the people, what other organizations are we related to, but I can also hide them if I want to. And the same goes for kind of defining initiatives or projects. You can define a project team, which is a collection of people working toward a goal, working in different roles. And you can map them around the periphery of the organization. And by clicking on those projects, it will actually show you which roles are involved. I think we also, I'll just show you one more example of the project thing, because that's not that exciting right there. We have 2 projects defined at Peerdom, apparently. But we, on this demo map, I remember that we've added some more projects. So here I have the projects, which then get mapped. And then as you see them, what it will do is it shows you which roles are involved in there. So you can kind of map the projects as a separate layer and define a project team And this shows you who is working in which roles across the organization. So you see kind of in parallel projects and also the constituent roles. So these are some of the building blocks that I think are most important of understanding: layers, color, texture, and so forth. There's also a couple other things that we play around with. This role has two colors, for instance, and the two colors are an indication that it has been mirrored somewhere else. And a mirrored role is just a role which has been copied from one place to another, but which, if you were to update it here, would also synchronize automatically with roles elsewhere. So in this case, I can see that this role is also been copied over here, and it's also been copied right here, and it's the same exact role. So these are duplicated roles which are synchronized together. And this is very useful for process roles in sociocracy, for instance, where you have the facilitator role, which has the same responsibilities no matter where it pops up. So this gives the flexibility to mirror a role across the organization and then assign it to a different person in those different contexts. And when you do so, actually, one thing you can see is that up here, it shows that it's been mirrored to other roles in the organization, and you can see who are the other people holding that same type of role across the organization. So this is a quick way of saying, okay, the delegate role has been mirrored to 6 other places. These are all the people holding it, and in which context are they holding that role? So this is a kind of way of grouping people together who hold the same specialization or type of role, but in maybe a different area inside of the organization. There's obviously a search engine as well, which you can use for almost anything in here. If I wanted to find a role or a person, etc. I think another thing that we're seeing here that pops up right here is we've recently also added this ability to do double linking, so that you can, which is important for sociocracy. For some of these process roles, the delegate and team leader tend to be drawn often on the axis of the super circle and the sub circle. So this is something that's kind of fresh for us as well. I haven't added a delegate role to everywhere, but now you can see that the roles which are deemed representative of the circle, so this is in sociocracy both a delegate and a team leader role, are drawn along this axis with the super circle. So the way that happens, actually, and I could cheat and say, hey, look, this record keeper role, that's a special role inside of the organization. What if I made it one of these leader roles, and I'll actually update it everywhere. Why not? We have nothing to lose. Then it draws it along that axis as well and kind of changes its visual form to pop out a bit. So what you can see is that those roles are drawn in a different place because of the fact that you've given it a certain status, and that status is generic. Because of our agnosticism, that means that you can flag any role to be a representative role or a leader role. You can change the vocabulary as you wish. And then it will be drawn in a different place. And actually, the team structure over here will be drawn differently. So I can tell that these people are holding some sort of special role, be it, I don't know, delegate or team leader, and that these people are not holding that. So there is this like separator, and you can quickly see who are the people holding a particular type of role. And I say particular because you can really literally do that with any role inside of the system. And in this circle, what I've done it with 3 different roles. So you can also, yeah, I think that's one lesson to be learned. Another thing that can be really important inside of Sociocracy is this elections app. I think this can be useful as well. So you can take any role. If you install the elections app, you can take any role, and when you edit it, make it electable. So you can determine that role should have an elected holder. And once it's been flagged as electable, then it gets this little triangle on it. So again, we play with a visual cue to say, okay, from above, I can tell that, you know, this has been mirrored or copied somewhere, that this one is elected, and these striped ones means there's no role holder. So you have a kind of legend, a visual legend from above to understand, okay, no holder here, this one's been mirrored, this one is elected, etc. This one has several things going on at once. There's a triangle, it's an elected, it's been mirrored somewhere else, and it's kind of embossed or sticking out. I know this is a representative role or some special role. It's elected and it's been mirrored somewhere else. And that you can tell just from looking at the kind of visual signature of the role. So when it's an elected role, then you can set, when you assign someone to it, you can set a term limit. And then inside of the elections app, it's a summary of all of the term limits, what roles are set to be elected, and when are the upcoming elections, who's currently holding it, and when are they due for a re-election. So then you can kind of edit the election date or say who has taken it over in the meantime. So this is a kind of, an agenda of upcoming elections, but across the entire organization. So elections role or elections app, useful. We recently released this Pages app as well. And here you can add meeting notes or employee handbooks or whatever visual or whatever kind of text you would like. In principle, this can all be shared with the whole team or attached into context. So we're currently making it so you can add that to a role or to a circle or to a project or to, basically anywhere inside of Peerdom, so that when you navigate to the place, you see it in context. And I'm going to stop with my monologue now for a moment in case you have questions, and I'll just check in really quickly with you to make sure I'm not dominating the discussion. Or
you are.
I completely.
There's only 4 minutes left, isn't there?
Yeah, but you know what? I'm listening. I'm all ears.
Layla, remember me? We know each other. Do you work? If you work with volunteers, tell me what your response is to his pitch, and can you use this? How would you use this?
Possibly. I just love being able to see things visually like that, and I really like the flexibility that it seems to offer. I'm wondering how small of teams it still works for, because the balance is always, having too much overhead for the number of people that you have. And so I can see where this would work really well in a large organization. Like I saw you had a map of SOFA, which has so many circles and so many people and everything. But I think it could still be useful for smaller teams. And I was glad that you showed a little bit about the pages, because that's something that I think is kind of missing with a lot of these visualization tools, where, you can see the circles, but it doesn't really go much farther than that.
I think that's nice feedback. The use cases absolutely depend on the size of the organization. This app store is, some things are more relevant for a certain size of organization than the other. And I'm glad you mentioned Pages, because I think this is in particular quite useful for smaller teams. We experience that. We're 12 people, and there are lots of functions that just don't make sense for us to use yet at our size. Nevertheless, I think the visual map can be useful. Pages can be useful. If you want to track goals, that can also be useful. There's usually you still have goals if you're 5 or 10 people.
What I'm imagining is that it's all these little teams. Like I just came out of Lumio and going, wow, and then, but it's not a big organization. where we're all inside, it's all little teams and circles and individuals working across like from neighborhood through a regional. And I'm a geographer and love maps and cartography, but I'm also very like, so much is written, and we live in a visual world, like you said, Lila, and we need, so the question is, well, I guess I just got to sign up, and you don't, but can it use for building networks? Because because we want to scale these connections and this collaboration across, you know, a regional level. And so like we're going to have hubs, and will this help? Will this, because I'm trying to figure out how.
So yeah, I mean, I'm glad you're thinking at the zoomed out level. So my answer is yes. We have there's a network app, and the network app is it provides the building blocks for connecting one organization to another. And currently, so this is something we're actually working on the visualization part with a lot more. Right now, there's something rudimentary in place, but the idea here is, if I'll turn off like these other layers, but you can turn on the network visualization, and it shows you who your network connections are. And this then is built by allowing you kind of, when you connect to another organization, you're able to hop over to their map or to kind of interchangeably see it. We're currently building it so that the search engine and stuff also includes the network connections, but it's based currently right now on a trust level. So you can set different trust levels across different network connections, which tells you how much information are you willing to share across those two. So this is on a organization to organization basis, and you build a network out of that. Now, this is still in its infancy, and it's being worked on as we speak. So my short answer is yes, there is, and that's where we're going.
Neat.
Yeah. So I'm running to the end of the official time, but I did start a few minutes later to welcome you in person as well. So I'm okay if you have any other questions, I'm here, and otherwise I can also answer them any other time as well.